Hello and welcome to MAGA, the podcast. Now, this is not your racist uncle's MAGA. Our MAGA stands for I'm an Angry Asshole, the cult of Donald Trump. And I am your host, the Disgusted American. The mission of this podcast is to expose how Don the Con bamboozled our country. Our goal is to make sure the cult of MAGA goes down in flames by 2028. We want to stop it before MAGA becomes unstoppable and our democracy further decays into a dictatorship. If we want the cult of MAGA to end, we have to know how it began and why it spread. We have to go back to Trump 1.0, the election of 2016. In our last episode, we took a deeper dive into the decision the Fourth Estate made when Trump entered the race in the summer of 2015. What happened when they chose ratings over journalistic integrity? When this new world of reality becoming reality TV really started to take hold, and Trump sucked up all of the oxygen from the other candidates. This week, we're going to get into what happened when Trump finally faced his rivals head to head. What happened when the other candidates finally got a chance to push the new king off the mountain? So Trump surged out to a huge lead in the polls. With a major assist from his constant free coverage from the media, Trump went from worst to first in the course of about a month. And one of his favorite strategies was to start off with a formal speech and then go way, way off topic. This made him irresistible to mainstream media, who started to bank on him to bring the crazy, which of course brought the ratings, reality TV becoming reality. For example, at an early kickoff to his campaign in Bluffton, South Carolina, Trump began with what is now his infamous routine. He launches into a rapid-fire denunciation of illegal immigration. But there was a buzz in the air over comments he had made in the previous weekend that disparaged the war record of Senator John McCain. After McCain criticized him and used the word crazies to describe Trump's supporters. This was Trump's response.
I said somebody should run against John McCain, who has been, in my opinion, not so hot. And I supported him. I supported him for president. I raised $1 million for him. It's a lot of money. I supported him. He lost. He let us down. But, he lost. So I never liked him as much after that, because I don't like losers. But Frank, let me get to it. He hit me. He's not a war hero. He's a war hero. He's a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
This is one of the problems with what's going on with America. McCain spent 5.5 years as a prisoner of war. Trump got 5 deferments to avoid serving in the Vietnam War. But Trump was the one to talk about military honor. It's insane. So then Trump changed the topic to Senator Lindsey Graham, who had been referring to Trump as a jackass. Graham says, I don't care if he drops out, stay in the race, just stop being a jackass. And Graham had been responding to the criticism of McCain. But Trump's supporters didn't really seem to care. Retiree Joyce McGinnis said, and I quote, I'm glad he said what he said, because if that's what he believes, regardless of the media attention and criticism, he should not apologize, end quote. And Carl Parkinson, who actually served in the military during World War II, said, I hope he, Trump, does himself change his mind. All these guys make a slip of the lip once in a while, These statements and these points of view have become part of Trump's arsenal of deflections and distractions. He never apologizes. He always doubles down. And he can be a total dick because other people make excuses for his behavior. They try to dress it up when he does and says horrible shit. So, again, he goes after Graham even more insistently.
Lindsey Graham, so he calls me a jackass this morning. And I said to myself, it's amazing. He doesn't seem like a very bright guy, okay? He actually probably seems to me not as bright honestly, is Rick Perry. But today I got called a jackass by this guy. And then I said to myself, hey, didn't this guy call me like 4 years ago? Yes. He called me 4 years ago, 4 years ago. Lindsey Graham. I didn't even know who he was. He goes, Mr. Trump, this is Senator Lindsey Graham. I wonder if it would be possible for you to call Fox. Because, until I ran, I had that little thing where I do just for fun. Fox and Friends are so great. Brian and Steve and Elizabeth. They're great people, right? They're great. And he wanted to know whether or not I could give him a good reference on Fox and Friends, okay? You want to know. Would I do that? And then, of course, you want to know whether or not he could come and see me for some campaign contribution. And he gave me his number, and I found the card. I wrote the number down. I don't know if it's the right number. Let's try it. 202. I don't know. Maybe it's, it's 3-4 years ago, so maybe it's an old number. 202. So, I don't know. Give it a shot.
While giving away the phone number may have been an escalation in rhetoric for Trump against his GOP rivals, it wasn't the first time he's done this. Trump published Univision's anchor George Ramos' personal phone number on his Instagram account in the wake of their feud when Trump started making his comments about Mexico. While Graham received the worst of Trump's barbs, other GOP candidates weren't spared. Trump aimed his firepower on Jeb Bush, saying, and I quote, "I'm not a fan of Jeb Bush because Jeb Bush is in favor of Common Core and he's weak on immigration. Those are our two bad things." He even went after Rick Perry.
I see Rick Perry the other day, and he's so, he's doing very poorly in the polls. He put glasses on so people will think he's smart. And it just doesn't work. People can see through the glasses.
So after all this, Trump goes back to his speech where he criticizes the Iran deal, saying, we should have doubled up the sanctions, maybe tripled up the sanctions, sat back for a few months, and let them call us. And believe me, I would have made one hell of a deal. That one's easy, end quote. And that's the problem with putting a confident jackass in charge, folks. He blusters with absolute confidence about things he doesn't understand. And we know after Trump just dropped bombs on 3 nuclear sites in Iran, that dealing with Iran is not easy. It's never been easy. And now we are in yet another Middle East shitstorm. Apparently learning nothing after the debacles in Iraq and Afghanistan. So between his official campaign announcement on June 16th to the date of the first Republican debate on August 6th, Trump was perching comfortably at the top of the polls. He was lapping his closest rivals by double digits. And it was easy going because he was just taking pot shots at people on campaign stops. It was still unclear how his answers would wear on voters over time, especially if he was matched up, as he would be during the first debate, with other contenders who had strong resumes and far more detailed policy plans than Trump did. So the first debate came just hours after a debate between 7 candidates who didn't make the cut, who didn't have the poll numbers. There were tiers to the presidential candidates.
Well, that's the exciting thing because, there's been a lot of question. Should it be divided? Should it not be divided? And yes, there were 2 tiers. There were the 7 lowest in the polls. Now we have the top 10 in the polls.
Before the main debate started, Chris Wallace already said what was in the room. He said, we don't want to make it the Donald Trump show, but it is.
They are positioned on the stage by how they stand in the polls. In the center of the stage tonight, businessman Donald Trump.
Trump was at center stage because he was leading in the polls, and he was flanked by all the other candidates. And things started off with a bang.
Is there anyone on stage, and can I see hands, who is unwilling tonight to pledge your support to the eventual nominee of the Republican Party and pledge to not run an independent campaign against that person? Again, we're looking for you to raise your hand now. Raise your hand now if you won't make that pledge tonight. Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump, to be clear, you're standing on a Republican primary debate.
I fully understand.
The place where the RNC will give the nominee the nod.
I fully understand.
And that experts say an independent run would almost certainly hand the race over to Democrats and likely another Clinton. You can't say tonight that you can make that pledge.
I cannot say. I have to respect the person that if it's not me, the person that wins. If I do win and I'm leading by quite a bit, that's what I want to do. I can totally make that pledge. If I'm the nominee, I will pledge I will not run as an independent. But and I am discussing it with everybody. But I'm talking about a lot of leverage. We want to win, and we will win. But I want to win as the Republican. I want to run as the Republican nominee.
So tonight you can't say if another one of these...
This is what's wrong. I mean, This is what's wrong. He buys and sells politicians of all stripes.
Now, many Republican stalwarts were concerned about his answers because it was certain to cost them votes with hardcore GOP voters who showed up for primaries if there was a third-party candidate. And these fears were well-founded because in the past, in an election a long time ago, George Bush Sr. lost his bid to get reelected as president when third-party candidate Ross Perot, who, like Trump, was a loudmouth billionaire businessman and was also crazy as a jaybird.
See, I'm the only guy that talks numbers. I love this. Nobody else will even talk about it. It's like I've said, it's like a crazy ant in the basement. Everybody knows she's there, but nobody talks about it.
Now, during the debate, Trump actually faced some unexpectedly sharp questions, like the first one from Megyn Kelly.
Mr. Trump, one of the things people love about you is you speak your mind and you don't use a politician's filter. However, that is not without its downsides, in particular when it comes to women. You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
No, it wasn't. Your Twitter account...
Thank you.
For the record, it was well beyond Rosie O'Donnell.
Yes, I'm sure it was.
Your Twitter account has several disparaging comments about women's looks. You once told a contestant on Celebrity Apprentice it would be a pretty picture to see her on her knees. Does that sound to you like the temperament of a man we should elect as president? And how will you answer the charge from Hillary Clinton, who is likely to be the Democratic nominee, that you are part of the war on women?
I think the big problem this country has is being politically correct. I've been challenged by so many people, and I don't frankly have time for total political correctness. And to be honest with you, this country doesn't have time either.
Now, he brushed off some of these comments as just being in fun. This is another turning point in what would actually happen ultimately with Trump. He pushed this idea of being an asshole as being politically correct. He still does this all the time. Nothing he says is ever wrong. He's never wrong. And if you think he's an asshole, well, you're just being politically correct or woke. Trump has normalized this idea. And now our country is awash in a tsunami of douchebags who are just horrible people, but blame any blowback on their terrible behavior on wokeness. No, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Sometimes an asshole is just an asshole. And when Trump was confronted with a question about the bankruptcy of one of his companies in Atlantic City that led to the loss of more than 1,000 jobs, here's what he had to say about it.
Getting a little R-rated.
Mr. Trump, you talk a lot about how you are the person on this stage to grow the economy. I want to ask you about your business record. Trump corporations, casinos and hotels have declared bankruptcy 4 times over the last quarter century. In 2011, you told Forbes magazine this: "I've used the laws of the country to my advantage." But at the same time, financial experts involved in those bankruptcies say that lenders to your companies lost billions of dollars. Question, sir, with that record, why should we trust you to run the nation's business?
Because I have used the laws of this country, just like the greatest people that you read about every day in business have used the laws of this country, the chapter laws, to do a great job for my company, for myself, for my employees, for my family, etc. I have never gone bankrupt, by the way. I have never. But out of hundreds of deals,
but sir,
excuse me,
that's your line, but your company have gone bankrupt.
What am I saying? Out of hundreds of deals that I've done, hundreds, on 4 occasions, I've taken advantage of the laws of this country, like other people. I'm not going to name their names because I'm not going to embarrass, but virtually every person that you read about on the front page of the business sections, they've used the law. The difference is when somebody else uses those laws, nobody writes about it. When I use it, they say, oh, Trump, Trump, Trump. The fact is, I built a net worth of more than $10 billion. I have a great, great company. I employ thousands of people, and I'm very proud of the job I did. Again, Chris, hundreds and hundreds of deals. 4 times I've taken advantage of the laws, and frankly, so has everybody else in my position.
Well, sir, let's just talk about the latest example, which is Trump Entertainment Resorts, which went bankrupt in 2009. In that case alone, lenders to your company lost over $1 billion and more than 1,100 people were laid off.
Well,
is that the way that you run the country?
Let me just tell you about the lenders. First of all, these lenders aren't babies. These are total killers. These are not the nice, sweet little people that you think, okay? You know, I mean, you're living in a world of the make-believe, Chris. You want to know the truth. And I had the good sense to leave Atlantic City, which, by the way, Caesars just went bankrupt. Every company, Chris can tell you, every company virtually in Atlantic City went bankrupt. Every company. And let me just tell you, I had the good sense, and I've gotten a lot of credit in the financial pages. 7 years ago, I left Atlantic City before it totally cratered, and I made a lot of money in Atlantic City, and I'm very proud of it. I want to tell you that. Very, very proud of it. So, by the way, this country right now owes $19 trillion, and they need somebody like me to straighten out that mess.
Now, this makes no sense. Why would we need a guy who's an expert on going bankrupt tackling national debt? He couldn't even handle his own debt, and shocker, he added trillions of dollars to the national credit card. But again, Trump didn't pay a price in the polls for his bullshit. So he just became more and more brazen thereafter. And then there was the issue of his constant flip-flopping. In the earlier debate, Carly Fiorina said that Trump's flip-flopped on healthcare, abortion, and immigration. She said, and I quote, "I would also just say this. Since he changed his mind on amnesty, on healthcare, and on abortion, I would have just asked, what are the principles by which he will govern?" End quote. And Trump did change his positions on all of these things, on single-payer healthcare. On abortion, he said, "I'm very pro-choice" on Meet the Press in 1999. But in a campaign-stop interview with the Christian Broadcasting Network, he said he changed his position. On immigration, Trump flip-flopped back and forth. He was once sympathetic to a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants, but then he says we should deport them. He told Bill O'Reilly in 2011 that the U.S. should determine which undocumented immigrants can stay on a case-by-case basis. He said, "You know, it's hard to generalize, but you're going to have to look at the individual people, see how they've done, see how productive they've been, see what their references are, and then make a decision." Now, Morning Joe, a month before that first debate, he was open on a pathway to citizenship for some undocumented immigrants. But then on July 30th, he tells CNN's Dana Bash that we should deport all undocumented immigrants and then allow some of the good ones to return. When Trump got challenged on his constant flip-flopping, he said, "Well, I've evolved." Flip-flopping was now evolution. And this matters. If telling the truth and credibility don't mean anything, then you're going to attract stone-cold liars like Donald J. Trump. Later in the debate, when Chris Wallace tried to goad Kasich into criticizing Trump, here's what Kasich had to say.
Governor Kasich, I know you don't like to talk about Donald Trump, but I do want to ask you about the merit of what he just said.
Chris, first of all, I was just saying to Chris Christie, they say we're outspoken. We need to take lessons from Donald Trump if we're really gonna learn it. Hey, here's the thing about Donald Trump. Donald Trump's hitting a nerve in this country. He is. He's hitting a nerve. People are frustrated. They're fed up. They don't think the government is working for them. And for people that want to just tune them out, they're making a mistake.
And it was a mistake. It's also a mistake to elect someone who's just angry and petty and on an endless revenge tour. Trump identified some of the frustrations of Americans, but he didn't do anything to fix them. When Chris Wallace pressed Trump on specifics on his favorite topic,
Mr. Trump, it has not escaped anybody's notice that you say that the Mexican government is sending criminals, rapists, drug dealers across the border. Governor Bush has called those remarks, quote, extraordinarily ugly. I'd like you're right next to him, talk to him directly and say how you respond to that. And you have repeatedly said that you have evidence that the Mexican government is doing this, but that you have evidence you have refused or declined to share. Why not use this first Republican presidential debate to share your proof with the American people?
So, if it weren't for me, you wouldn't even be talking about illegal immigration, Chris. You wouldn't even be talking about it. This was not a subject that was on anybody's mind until I brought it up at my announcement, and I said, Mexico is sending. Except the reporters, because they're a very dishonest lot, generally speaking, in the world of politics, they didn't cover my statement the way I said it. The fact is, since then, many killings, murders, crime, drugs pouring across the border, our money going out and the drugs coming in. And I said, we need to build a wall, and it has to be built quickly. And I don't mind having a big, beautiful door in that wall so that people can come into this country legally. But we need, Jeb, to build a wall. We need to keep illegals out.
Mr. Trump, I'll give you 30 seconds. I'll give you 30 seconds to answer my question, which was, what evidence do you have, specific evidence, that the Mexican government is sending criminals across the border? 30 seconds.
Border Patrol, I was at the border last week. Border Patrol, people that I deal with, that I talk to, they say this is what's happening because our leaders are stupid. Our politicians are stupid. And the Mexican government is much smarter, much sharper, much more cunning. And they send the bad ones over because they don't want to pay for them. They don't want to take care of them. Why should they when the stupid leaders of the United States will do it for them? And that's what's happening, whether you like it or not.
Now, again, look at Trump's claims, right? He claims that Mexico sends its criminals across the border and the U.S. does nothing. But Pew Center reports show that the number of undocumented immigrants coming from Mexico declined after the recession of 2008, and the undocumented population was stable at around 11 million people. That same report also said that deportations had hit a record in 2013. Around 400,000 people per year, and many of them were criminals. So this idea that people didn't get deported and criminals were running free wasn't true. But there's major fallout from Americans allowing things like this to be okay. When Trump babbles out nonsense with no evidence, even his story, some guys told me at the border, who? What were their names? There are never any names or dates in Trump's stories because they never happened. He should begin all of these stories with the phrase once upon a time, because these are all bullshit fairy tales that he makes up on the spots with imaginary people who said anonymous things. And we never know who they are. We never know when they said it. So after the first debate, Trump took to Twitter to slam debate moderator Megyn Kelly, tweeting and retweeting attacks on her into the early hours of the morning. And we know his famous comments, right?
About Megyn Kelly, because you brought her up. She did push you, pushed a lot of people, but what is it with you and Megyn Kelly?
Well, I just don't respect her as a journalist. I have no respect for her. I don't think she's very good. I think she's highly overrated. But when I came out there, what am I doing? I'm not getting paid for this. I go out there and, they start saying, lift up arm if you're going to, I didn't know there'd be 24 million people. I figured, but I knew it was going to be a big crowd because I get big crowds. I get ratings. They call me the ratings machine. So I have, she gets out and she starts asking me all sorts of ridiculous questions. And, you could see there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever.
So he made the entire post-debate discussion about Megyn Kelly being on her period and being a bitch. Not about his lies about Mexico or his bankruptcies or his constant flip-flopping. This is another core principle of Donald Trump's distraction playbook. This idea of whataboutism. And if people allow it, then of course that's going to become normalized. Because it's way easier to change the subject and ask, what about this and what about that, than it is to tell the truth and provide evidence. How did the main topic after the debate become Megyn Kelly's period? What the fuck? But rivals and journalists were not able to penetrate his web of bullshit, distractions, and deflections. Trump even has a name for it. When he darts between different subjects to avoid answering a question, he calls it the weave. So in this episode, we broke down the effect, right? Around how does Trump walk away from these car crashes? The next episode, we're going to take a deeper dive into the causes. How did he normalize and get away with these antics? Why does his goofy nonsense work? That's all we've got for this week. If you want to help out the channel, please subscribe or follow us on your favorite podcasting platform and let your fellow disgusted Americans know where we are so they can give us a listen. And leave us a rating on your platform so more folks can find the show. Appreciate you tuning in. New episodes every Wednesday. Look forward to talking to you again. Have a great night, folks. Ciao. Bye for now.